Good morning, everyone. We are pleased to welcome you and see you at this brief stakeout. As I promised before, I'm a little bit superstitious. I said before we really get to Afghanistan, I didn't want to comment. Now, as I promised, after the return, we would like to give a press conference about a very fast trip to Afghanistan. As you know, the Security Council organized a mission to Afghanistan from 13th to 15th of January 2018, which was the first such mission to the country since 2010. Kazakhstan organized this trip in order to provide the members of the Security Council with an opportunity to witness the efforts of the government of Afghanistan, supported by the global community, to keep and sustain peace and security in the country. In Kabul, we had fruitful meetings with Afghan partners at different levels, including the president, the chief executive of the country, the national security advisor, the leadership of the High Peace Council, as well as key ministers, representatives of political parties and the parliament, non-governmental organizations, and leaders of women's groups. We further met with leadership of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan and NATO's Resolute Support Mission. Discussions with a variety of interlocutors provided mission members with a comprehensive and in-depth overview of the political, security, social, economic, and human rights situation in the country. During the visit, Security Council members noted concern with the persistence of insecurity, especially with the intensification of terrorism activities in the north and east of Afghanistan, and the regrouping of foreign terrorist fighters coming out of Syria and Iraq in Afghanistan. We urged the intensification of the peace and reconciliation, knowing that a military solution cannot be sufficient without a political process. Council members further reiterated the importance of sticking to the electoral calendar of organizing parliamentary and district-level elections this year and presidential ones next year. The Afghan government and the people need the support of the Security Council and that of the international community. International assistance remains essential for peace and reconciliation, and it should be better coordinated to support an Afghan-led process. Yet while development assistance is important in promoting stability, peace and security, and should also be intensified through economic integration in the regional process. In this regard, my country, Kazakhstan, echoes the sentiments of the government of Afghanistan in calling for a new paradigm of assistance based on investments and providing access to opportunities for trade, infrastructure, energy exchanges, market solutions, and connectivity. As a country geographically located in the wider region surrounding Afghanistan, we also have a direct and legitimate interest in solving common threats and challenges and reaping common benefits. The stabilization and reconstruction in Afghanistan, we recognize, will also present an opportunity for Central Asian countries to unify their efforts and reinvigorate regional cooperation. We call this promoting the concept of security development nexus, which Kazakhstan proposes as an alternative way to reach stability and security in Central and South Asia. President Nursultan Nazarbayev of Kazakhstan proposed the vision as a key priority of his policy address to the Security Council in January 2017 when Kazakhstan joined the Council. I would like to thank all my colleagues on the Council who joined us on this important trip and for the unity with which we displayed our support for a new trajectory for Afghanistan. Thank you. I now give the floor to Ambassador Haley, who will be followed by Ambassador Van Ostrom. So, Nikki, please go ahead.
Thank you, Karat. And first, I want to thank the Kazakhstan mission and all of the work that they put into this. This was a very thoughtful trip in the fact that we saw every aspect of the Afghan government. We saw everything that they're working on, from education to business to military, all aspects, and we heard both sides of the story. So we really got a full picture. And so again, congratulations to the Kazakhstan mission for a fantastic trip. What I can tell you is, from the United States standpoint, it was a great trip to Afghanistan because the U.S. policy on Afghanistan is working. we could see dramatic changes in terms of what the U.S. policy has been doing. We are seeing that we're closer to talks with the Taliban and the peace process than we've seen before. From all the government officials, they were very, very grateful, and we're working hand in hand with the Afghans, and I think that we really are going to continue to work towards a peace process, with the goal being that we do not want Afghanistan to be a safe haven for terrorism anymore. And so we continue to go down that path. It was great to see our U.S. troops. You can't help but be inspired by their service and their sacrifice and their commitment. It is not a safe area, but they're making it safer every day, and their ability to work with the partners on this council as well as the Afghan military has really been strong. It was impressive to see President Ghani and his administration. They are moving forward on reforms. We saw that in particular when you look at the fact that they're trying to work against corruption and really make moves on that. One good example was they are changing the retirement age from 72 to 60. By doing that, 4,000 military leaders are going to be retiring. And that in itself shows a big difference. 70 of those were generals. So they are now bringing in a new generation of military leaders to take it forward. We saw half of the cabinet was under the age of 40. So there really is a new, younger leadership that is taking place that is pushing for reforms. We're seeing more girls in school. We obviously are seeing the status for women is changing. It has a long way to go, but it is changing, and they are working on that as well. I think the biggest importance for the U.S. is certainly elections. We have parliamentary elections this year that need to take place, and then presidential next year. And we, along with the council, reiterated the point that they need to be free and fair elections, but they also need to include every ethnic community so that it is inclusive and moves forward towards really being something that represents the people. So we will be watching that. I think what is most important that the U.S. wanted was we wanted to see an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned policy. And what was impressive is the Afghan leaders are completely taking responsibility for that. They don't ask us for things, they're telling us what they're doing. It wasn't about talk, it was about action, and we could see those. And I think if they can continue down that path of results, we'll continue to see this peace process moving forward. I think what was asked of the Security Council that I found interesting from Afghanistan was they basically asked for three things. One was they asked for consensus on international pressure to get Pakistan to change its behavior. They continue to make 10 steps forward, and with Pakistan, they feel like they continue to take steps backwards. And they said that as long as they're supporting terrorism in Pakistan, the Afghan community is continuing to feel it and is not safe. And so they did ask us for consensus to put further pressure on Pakistan to come to the table and change their behavior. The second thing that they asked for was help with narcotics. I think that they really are trying to change the trade there, and the way they want the Security Council help is to make sure that we look at where the narcotics are produced, but then also every country that moves them. And so I think that's a bigger situation, but it's something that the U.S. certainly wants to look at as we go forward, because it doesn't just apply to Afghanistan, it applies to many places around the world, and we think that could be helpful. And then the final thing they asked was consensus of all of us and support from the region, because they really feel the need to have international support and consensus in a way that we're all working towards the same thing. And I think you saw that out of the council. I was very proud to be a part of this team because everyone was in agreement that Afghanistan's moving in a good direction, and we have to continue to help them do that. So a fantastic trip. Thanks again to Kazakhstan for really giving us great insight and being able to see on the ground exactly what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. And Ambassador of Netherlands, please.
Thanks, Kairat. Thanks, Nikki. Let me add some remarks from the perspective of the penholder on Afghanistan in the Council. We feel that the visit was very useful to provide information about the current situation in Afghanistan to all members of the Council. And as penholder, we will do our utmost to facilitate that the results of this visit will feed into the Council's discussion on the extension of the mandate of UNAMA. And the government of Afghanistan was very clear it attaches great importance to the work of UNAMA. And as my Italian colleague last year already told me, you know about the split term between Italy and the Netherlands, when the Council is united, it has great impact. And that was evident during this visit. From a personal perspective, let me add some observations as well. For me, this was my 5th visit to Afghanistan since 2006, and I was struck by great progress on the position of women in society, enormous enhancement of education for girls and boys, and thirdly, improvements in the health sector. And the ownership of the current government of the national challenges and its commitment to address them, I felt was remarkable. At the same time, the security situation remains problematic, especially the terrorist attacks against innocent civilians. And these terrorist attacks can only serve to strengthen our resolve to counter terrorism. In our strong conviction, only an integrated approach combining diplomacy, defense and development, so-called 3D approach, can lead to sustainable peace. And my Minister of Foreign Affairs, Halbe Zijlstra, will participate in Friday's debate on Afghanistan here in the Council. Finally, let me express my admiration for the Kazakh presidency. This visit took a year of preparation, and thanks to your persistence, you made it happen. Thanks so much.
Mr. President,
Thank you.
Mr. President, why there are 3 missing members of the Security Council among you? And a question for Ambassador Haley. Since we hear all the time about talks held between the U.S. and Taliban, and now we're hearing about negotiations between Russia and Taliban, is it time now for the Taliban to be included in the political process in Afghanistan?
Actually, just would like to mention that it was a very tense trip. Actually, we met 120 people. We held 15 meetings just in the span of 1.5 days. It was quite an intense program. Everybody from the Security Council members participated in the visit. Today we have those who are available, so to say, today, but it doesn't mean anything that someone is missing, because this takeout is kind of a voluntary thing, just to come out and speak to the press. I don't see any issues here. And Nikki, if you answer the question.
So I think, the one thing that we took from the trip, and I think the one thing that's important, is that the entire peace process is Afghan-led and Afghan-owned. And so what we have seen, as they said, since the U.S. strategy went into place, they're starting to see the Taliban concede. They're starting to see them move towards coming to the table, and I think that we're going to let the Afghan government do that. We don't think that we need to facilitate the peace process. We think we need to support the peace process. And they feel confident that the Taliban will be coming to the table, and we think those negotiations will be very helpful.
Maybe a follow-up on that. Talking to the Taliban was one of the first things you mentioned. You are here as one of the ambassadors of the Security Council. You also were in Afghanistan as a member of President Trump's administration. Right. Is now a peace deal with the Taliban one of the top priorities for the administration?
I think one of the top priorities for the administration is to make sure that we do everything we can to combat terrorism. And in Afghanistan, we know that has been a long-time safe haven for terrorism. So yes, we think peace is very important. We think the Taliban coming to the table is very important. And we think that the entire international community needs to support this process so that we can have peace. It's not just about Afghanistan. It's not just about the region, but it really is about safety in the world and how we're going to continue as an international community to treat terrorism going forward.
Ambassador Haley, last month in a press conference in D.C., I want to take this opportunity to ask you about this. In a press conference, you talked about a coalition. The administration is working on building an international coalition to counter Iranian regional influence. And this became a news in the Middle East and certainly in Arabic-speaking local media. I want to ask can you tell me about those efforts to create is there an international coalition right now, an effort to create that?
Well, I think out of respect for the Security Council and the fact that the focus is on the Afghanistan trip, I think it's important that we just stay on that. If you have any further questions, you can get with John on that.
I thank you, everyone, because
Afghanistan. Was there any discussion about the U.S. decision to cut off military assistance to Pakistan and the impact that could have on peace efforts, or the opposite in Afghanistan?
Actually, this was also a part of discussion, but I would like just to underline that the discussions were more on the positive side, saying yes, this is the problems are happening, issues are happening in bilateral relations between those two countries, but the Afghan government was saying that they are ready to negotiate, they are ready to work with regional partners on host of different issues like political, economic, and others. And so the message of Afghan government was very reassuring from the point of view of continuing efforts to find a peaceful resolution to all the outstanding issues. So with this, I would like to finalize this because we have to return back and continue our work, our program. I thank you very much for your interest, and of course, if you have any further issues, we will be ready to answer them with our mission. Thank you very much, and I thank every member of the Security Council who traveled with us and are present today. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Haley, is the African Union going to get their